All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going on a whirlwind tour of psychology. We're going to crack open the code of the human mind and figure out, why we do the things we do.
I mean, you've been there, right? You've got a deadline breathing down your neck, but you just can't stop that thumb from scrolling. You know you should stop, but you just don't. What is that all about?
Or what about that knot you get in your stomach right before a huge presentation or a first date? Those butterflies, that anxiety, where does all that even come from?
Well, it turns out those little everyday mysteries are exactly what psychology is all about. It's not some dusty old theory. It's literally the science of understanding why you feel and act the way you do.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What even is psychology? Let's get the official definition on the table.
At its core, it's pretty simple. Psychology is the scientific study of three main things. First, your mind. That's all your thoughts, memories, and all that internal chatter. Second, your emotions, the happiness, the sadness, the anger. And third, your behavior, the stuff you actually do. It's basically the whole package of what makes you, you.
And the whole point isn't just to talk about it. The goal is to explain why we act a certain way, maybe predict what we might do next, and sometimes even figure out how to change those behaviors for the better.
Now, psychology didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's got a really cool origin story, kind of born from the meeting of two much older fields. For thousands of years, you had philosophy asking these huge questions like, what is consciousness? At the same time, you had biology looking at the physical brain, the nuts and bolts. Psychology is what happened when those two worlds finally slammed into each other. And the Big Bang moment? 1879. That's when a guy named Wilhelm Wundt opened the very first psychology lab, officially making the study of the mind a real science. So once psychology became a legit science, the ideas just started flying. And in the early days, it was a total battle of the bands, with all these different schools of thought fighting to be the one true explanation for everything.
So in one corner, you had structuralism, led by that same guy, Wundt. They wanted to break the mind down into its tiniest little pieces, kind of like taking an engine apart to see all the gears. But then, in the other corner, you had functionalism. They were like, who cares what the pieces are? What does the engine do? Inspired by Darwin, they were all about how our minds help us survive in the world.
And then, Sigmund Freud walked into the room. He came in with this wild new idea called psychoanalysis. He basically said that the real driver behind everything we do isn't the stuff we're aware of, but this deep, hidden part of our minds, the unconscious, filled with all these hidden desires and old memories.
The behaviorists heard all this talk about a hidden unconscious and pretty much said, no way. Their whole philosophy was, if you can't see it and measure it, it doesn't count. So, forget the mind, let's just study behavior. They argued we learn everything from rewards and punishments. You know, when you post a picture on Instagram and the likes start rolling in, that little reward makes you want to post again. That is pure behaviorism right there.
After all that, humanism came along as a reaction. Thinkers like Abraham Maslow said, hey, what about our potential for growth and good? His famous hierarchy of needs is the perfect picture of this. He said you have to start at the bottom with basic needs like food and safety. Once that's covered, you can work your way up to love and belonging, and only then can you reach the very top, which he called self-actualization, becoming the best version of yourself.
Okay, let's fast forward to today. Modern psychology is a little different. Psychologists don't really stick to just one of those old schools anymore. It's more like they have a whole toolkit filled with different perspectives. So, a psychologist today trying to understand anxiety won't just pick one theory. They'll look at it from all sides. They'll look at it from a biological lens and check your brain chemistry. They'll use a cognitive lens to look at your thought patterns. And they'll use a social-cultural lens to see how your family or your job might be playing a role. It's all part of the same big puzzle. Okay, I know that's a ton of history and theory. So the big question is, why should you actually care about any of this? Let's talk about the real-life payoff for you.
First things first, knowing a little psychology is like holding up a mirror to yourself. It helps you finally decode your own habits, your fears, your motivations. It starts to answer that huge question, why on earth do I do that?
It's also kind of like getting a user manual for other people. When you get what makes them tick, their motivations, their emotions, it just becomes so much easier to communicate, to empathize, and to build way stronger relationships.
And on a super practical level, it can help you in school or at work. Seriously. By understanding how your memory and attention actually function, you can learn to study smarter, not just harder.
And this one is so important.
Knowing the basics helps you recognize the warning signs of mental health struggles, both in yourself and in the people you care about. And that is always the first step toward getting help and being a good friend or family member.
So there you have it. We've gone from ancient Greek philosophers all the way to the modern psychologist's toolkit. It's all about trying to explain everything, from why you're watching this right now to your biggest dreams. Which brings me to one last question for you. Now that you've got the basics down, what's the first thing you want to figure out about your own mind?